Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning Five here on Friday, October 3rd, 2025. I am Dave Biddle. Very happy to be joined by Mr. Jonah Booker. All right, let's get the predictions up and going here. So, Buckeyes, probably final home night game of the season. At least we got two this year, right? Ohio University and now Minnesota. Buckeyes covered by 23.5. Over-under is 42.5. All right, as we normally do, I will give the 3, 2, 1, and announce mine, and then you can announce yours. Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
31-6.
We're pretty close. I have 38-7.
There we go.
You have 31-6?
31-6. So you got it slightly going over. And I can see that depending on if they decide to pick up the pace a little bit and open up the offense a little bit more, especially to start the game. I could definitely see them scoring 38. I think this Minnesota defense is they're ranked, fairly high there, and both teams are considered bottom 5% of pace of play in all of college football. So I'm curious to see how this first half will start out. Will we kind of get the same type of game plan that we've been seeing lately against Power 5 teams, or do we see them kind of open it up, stretch the field?
Yeah, I feel like this is the week that they are going to unleash Julian against a Power 4 team. Like, they unleashed him enough against, obviously, Grambling, and at least in the second half against Ohio University. Even in the second half last week against Washington, you can say they opened it up, but only had 6 possessions the entire game. As you mentioned, Ohio State's just they don't have many plays, but I think this is the week they're going to take some more deep shots. As you mentioned, this Minnesota, we'll get to Minnesota's offense in a minute. I think they're actually better than I expected, but this defense seems leaky, giving up 27 points to Cal, giving up 28 to Rutgers. Yeah, I think this is the week they open up the passing game a little bit, JB.
Well, the funny part about it, last week we were talking about how Washington's defense was leaky. They were one of the worst secondaries in college football defending the pass, and you had arguably their best cornerback was also missing that game, on top of them allowing 70% throws even to the lower level. And what did they do? They started the game 10 runs out of the first 13 plays. And I'm like, you guys are giving Washington a little bit more respect than what they probably should be getting, considering this defense has been kind of giving up chunk plays throughout the season, especially against lower level teams. But here we are, good win against Washington, going out on the road, cover the spread. Now it's really time to, Dave, as we start to hit October, start to really build that momentum as we get into the fall and the leaves start to change. The air gets a little bit crisper. Now it's time to really pick up the pace, pick up the tempo a little bit.
Minnesota's offense is solid. They have a quarterback. I think he's going to struggle tomorrow night against the best defense in the country. But they found their quarterback, Drake Lindsey. He's a redshirt freshman. He's a big guy. He's like Will Howard size, he might be a little taller than Will. He lists him at 6'5", 230. He can run it a little bit. He's got a strong arm. He's a good quarterback. They also have a good running back who's missed the last 2 games. I bet he comes back tomorrow night, though. So they've got some weapons on that offense. The offense is a little bit better than I thought. But, man, this defense for Ohio State, I'm not going to predict anybody's going to get – I did last week, and I don't know what I was thinking. I think I had Washington getting double digits last week. I'm not picking anybody else to get double digits on this defense until –
Well, considering Washington was averaging 55 points a game – coming into last week's game, so it wasn't unreasonable to potentially think that Washington could get 10 points last week at home, considering they've been putting up 55 a game. But now you look at where we're at this week, and you're like, boy. I mean, I'm at the mind frame now, Dave. When you look at this Matt Patricia defense, and I was listening to what PJ Fleck was saying. And then you listen to what Jed Fish was saying post-game. And then I think back about what Steve Sarkisian at Texas was saying. And the one thing that they all have been saying consistently was it's extremely difficult to decipher what Ohio State is doing defensively from post-snap. When they line up, they're doing something completely different post-snap. And then I was thinking to myself, if they're making quarterback's life a living hell trying to figure out what they're doing because they're so good at disguising, would it take maybe I'm out of line here, Dave, and maybe I'm over my skeezers here. Would it take potentially some type of Heisman level type of performance for a quarterback going up against this defense and Matt Patricia to say, hey, I am so in tune where your defense is going to be dropping, where the coverage is going to be at, that I'm going to pick you guys apart. Like maybe I'm just overconfident, but I just can't see a college kid right now saying coming out there and just picking this defense apart because they're so good at disguising everything pre-snap.
It's just so damn impressive. I mean, it's the more I talk about it, it's just almost like unbelievable, even for Ohio State, because you lose 8 starters off that defense from last year, the number 1 defense in the country. All of them are draft picks, and they still need to prove it. I don't want to disrespect the guys that were awesome parts of that national championship team, but like the 3 returning starters were playing great: Caleb Downs, IGB, and Sonny Styles, and certain guys like Arvell Reese are playing better than the guys that they replaced who had great seasons. Cody Simon had a fantastic season, awesome season. No one would say he's better than Arvell Reese. Look what Caden Curry's doing. It's just Caden McDonald is a first-year starter. It's just really impressive what this defense is better than what they were last year. I can't believe I'm saying it.
You calling it, Dave? Because Beanie and Cardell, they had a great debate on their pod this week. Cardell said he wasn't ready to crown him yet, but Beanie said, I'm calling it, man. This defense is better than last year. I thought it was fascinating with the Caleb Downs podcast earlier this week. They had Sonny and they had Sonny's brother and a couple other guys on there talking about the defense. And Sonny was saying, like, this year is way less stressful having the green dot. And he was saying last year, he goes, the defense was crashing out on them because they were so late getting the calls in that teams were basically lining up and they didn't have the calls, and everybody's looking at him. And Sonny was saying this year it is so much less stressful having the green dot, getting the calls in. And I thought it was fascinating that Cardell Jones said he had talked specifically to Arvell, Sonny, and Caleb. And he asked them straight up, like, hey, man, what's the difference from this year defense compared to last year? And the one thing that they said was, first, everything has been simplified. Guys are playing faster. And when you have guys playing faster, it's much easier for guys to understand the defense. And that's a kudos to the coaching staff. They have done a tremendous job teaching this defense and getting these guys to buy in. I thought the defense was going to be good, Dave. I would have never in my wildest dreams would have thought that this early in the season that they would have been this good. If they continue to get better, you're talking about statistically one of the best defenses in Ohio State history when you start looking back at the stats. The other thing that they talked about, some of the players, was last year the defense was very complicated, especially at the line of scrimmage. Now they don't have that. Matt Patricia gives those guys a lot of freedom. That's what they said. And they really like that about this year's defense. They get a lot more freedom. So guys are being able to do their thing, but they're also trusting the man next to them. And I thought it was fascinating that these guys are saying, like, hey, we had a great championship defense last year, but it was so convoluted that sometimes guys were paralysis by analysis, that sometimes it caused especially younger guys to have to overthink. And if you weren't really a veteran in that Jim Knowles defense and getting a lot of those reps, things could be a little difficult there, to where it was creating guys to be playing flat-footed instead of see ball, get ball, and reacting and playing with relentless abandon. That's kind of where they're at right now.
This is the perfect segue here. The Mattis Hatter saying J Book's first half unders are paying my rent. There you go. I know it's a joke. I always tell people, like, listen, if you're trying to pay your bills with sports betting, don't do that. Don't have fun with it. Which I know you're joking. I hope. All right, let's get to it. Man, just when I was getting on the winning trail, I lost last week, so I'm down to, what am I down to? Like, I'm not doing well.
I think you're 2-3.
And you're 4-1.
I got my first one.
Hey, if you're going 4-1 in betting, that's awesome. So, all right, I'm gonna try and get back to 500. All right, mine is, we just had a question about Penn State. Should we recruit for Penn State? I think this is a get well week for Penn State going out to the Rose Bowl to play a terrible UCLA team. It's a pretty big point spread, but I see Penn State just destroying that. I won't be surprised if Penn State wins this by 40. So Penn State's favored by 24.5. If I was betting a lot of money, I'd probably buy that point down to 23.5 if I was really putting a lot on it. But I'm going to stick with what it is. I'll say Penn State will cover the 24.5 points against UCLA. Bam.
I like that. Well, I think UCLA just fired another coach this week, one of their coordinators. So you're talking about a UCLA program that's going into this Penn State game. They got dominated by Northwestern last week. Now you're looking at a situation to where Penn State's trying to get that bad taste out of their mouth. UCLA doesn't have a head coach, a defensive coordinator, or an offensive coordinator. So they're completely short-staffed right now. So it's a hot mess. I mean, UCLA probably can't wait to get this season over with so that they can start the process, because it's going to be a mass exodus of players entering the transfer portal. But I've never seen a situation where we're week 5 in, Dave, and a program doesn't have a head coach, a defensive coordinator, or an offensive coordinator. I mean, at this point, and you have to think that if you're a coach on that staff, those guys are probably calling all around the country to try to line up their next gig.
Gabagool. I like that. Little Tony Soprano reference there. Yeah, Caden Curry, unbelievable. And no one was talking about him entering the year. And this is nothing against Kenyatta Jackson because he's playing well. There's a lot of hype about Kenyatta Jackson. And again, Kenyatta is playing well. The stats might not be there, but he's disruptive and he's got some stats. Yeah. No one was talking about Caden Curry. There was more buzz about Bo Atkinson. I had a lot of people tell me, I bet Bo Atkinson's going to start over Caden Curry. I'm like, I think Curry's going to start, and Atkinson's playing well. But nobody was talking about Caden Curry, and he's playing at an all-American level. He's
playing. He's tied for the sacks in Big Ten now.
He's second nationally in sacks with 5, tied for second nationally. And the only guy ahead of him plays for Utah, and he's played an extra game.
Yeah,
Utah has 6, but he's played an extra game. Buckeyes have only played 4 games. Utah's played 5. So, all right, your best bet, sir. Whatever you do.
All right, man. I'm going back against the team that you bet against last week. I watched that game, the Kansas versus Cincinnati game, and Kansas basically handed that game to Cincinnati. They had no business winning that game. Kansas literally fumbled the ball on the 1-yard line, gave it away, could have put the game away, dropped the interception right at the very end, could have put the game away. Cincinnati got out of there, by the hair of their butt with that win. They got so lucky. So I don't think they can keep that type of play up against Iowa State. I like the way Iowa State's playing right now. This is an opportunity for them to be the first team to go bowl eligible tomorrow. I think the over-under is, depending on where you look at it, Iowa's getting 1.5. I like them straight up on the money line. They're playing some outstanding football. Came off a bye last week, dominated their game coming off a bye. I like Iowa State at Cincinnati plus 1.5 as my best bet for this week.
I will definitely jump on that. I don't see the Bearcats getting quite so fortunate 2 weeks in a row, though they are playing at home, and I'm sure it'll be sold out with Iowa State being ranked, 14th. But you're right, Cincinnati, 1.5 favorite the Bearcats are. I don't know about that. All right, I'm going to ask you about this. I'm sure you have seen it. Have you seen this private equity stuff with the Big Ten?
Oh, my goodness. It makes zero sense, Dave. I mean, especially for programs like Ohio State and Michigan, it would be absolutely insane for the Big Ten to sign over their rights to 2046 to a private equity firm. They're basically going to strip whatever they can down to try to guarantee some type of return of investment on their part. But Michigan and Ohio State has to hold the line here. Yes. I know one of the regents from Michigan came out and said there's no way that they would sell off assets from Michigan to a private equity firm, and he's hoping that Ohio State does the same. Some of these schools that are broke within the Big Ten, which I don't get, considering they're getting the same equal pay as Ohio State, they're not investing as much into their football program. They don't have 500 Olympic sports like Ohio State does, right. And they're still trying to sell their rights until 2046. It makes zero sense. for them to do this. Like, keep private equity out of college football. I don't understand why the Big Ten commissioner would even consider this. And from my understanding, like, it's going to have granted rights because they're going to lock that in. We all see what Florida State and Clemson are trying to do with these long-term granted rights that are 20 years long down the line in the ACC. And then on top of that, your Fox is going to have some type of pull there. Basically, to summarize it up, they're going to ask Ohio State and Michigan, the two breadwinners in the conference, to once again carry the load for the next 20 years so that everybody else, considering Rutgers, Iowa, Indiana, well, Indiana's better now, but Northwestern, to still get equal pay as Ohio State and Michigan. And when you look at the dollar amount, I mean, like somebody said, $2 billion over until 2046. Like that, when you break it down, that's not even a lot of money to be selling your rights over. I don't get it, Dave. I don't know why the Big Ten commissioner would even entertain anything like this. Like, if you want to stream, like, hey, create your own streaming platforms and networks. Like, there's way more creative ways that you can generate money as opposed to selling your rights off.
You nailed it. I mean, if you're Rutgers or you're Purdue or you're Northwestern and you fill in the blank, there's a few more we could mention. You should definitely want this. There's no reason Ohio State or Michigan should want this, or Penn State, really, or Oregon.
Or Oregon.
Yeah. And Oregon right now is only getting half of the 88 million. Still not bad to be getting 44 million considering what happened to the Pac-12. That runs through 2030. So they have 5 more years. Oregon and Washington, they're only getting half shares. Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. And private equity, man, I know there are exceptions to the rule, but that almost always goes bad. When private equity comes in and buys a business, they're just going to, bleed it dry, file for bankruptcy. Again, in most cases, not all, but I don't like this. This would not be the same thing. Obviously, the Big Ten's not going to go bankrupt. But, like, what are we doing here, Petiti? I liked Petiti at first. The more he talks, the more ideas he comes up with. I'm just like, dude, if it wasn't for Kevin Warren, I'd call you like the worst commissioner I've ever seen. He's not as bad as our guy Kay Warren, but he's pretty bad. He's pretty bad.
I mean, it's insane to sign over your rights for that long of a period of time, considering the game is changing. College football is changing like every year. I mean, if you're in a situation to where the SEC decides to be active and they start adding Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, and then at that point, the Big Ten's locked in and you can't do anything. There's zero maneuvering. And you're just going to let the SEC then the playoffs are going to expand to 16 teams. And the SEC is now going to say, hey, we demand 8 teams out of the 16 teams because we've expanded our conference. And now the Big Ten's looking there is like, oh yeah, we can't match that because we signed a stupid deal that's going to pay the bottom half of our Big Ten conference the same amount of money as our breadwinners. It makes zero sense. Like, at first, when Florida State and those guys were kind of going through their whole shindig with the ACC, my first logical thought was like, man, they're being greedy. And now you see the way Ohio State gets treated by Fox and the way Ohio State is being asked to carry the load for the rest of this conference. You take a step back and you kind of understand where Florida State was coming from at that period of time. It's like, hey, man, if we're going to have to carry the weight for this conference, like, we should be getting more. There's no way you're going to ask us to sign over rights and assets of Ohio State on top of making the same amount of money as Northwestern. Like, that makes zero sense for Ohio State to sign up for any of those type of deals. And if they do, Dave, like, I need to see something like, hey, if it's going to be ratings based, like the more ratings, we're going to get more of the cut or something like that. But if you're talking about equal share down the line, they shouldn't do it at all.
And that's even, and I know, like, the report said that it would be in tiers, as somebody said in the chat, that like, in theory, Ohio State and Michigan would get more, from this private equity. If it's $2 billion, they would get a larger chunk than Rutgers would, for example. We don't know exactly what that is, but it sounds like Ohio State and Michigan would get more of the pie. I still don't like it. I don't think there's any reason for private equity to get involved in the Big Ten for Ohio State. This is one of the few times Ohio State and Michigan need to lock arms and be united on something. It's kind of weird, but yeah.
Dave, they're asking, do we got any any other games we like for the weekend? You got any
Yeah.
other any lights?
Yeah, I kicked around. There's two really bad ACC teams that are playing each other. Pitt is hosting Boston College. I
Yeah.
saw Pitt was getting 6.5 points. I'm like, really? Can they beat anybody by that much? And maybe they can beat Boston College. If I was going to do a second one, it would be Boston College covering that spread, 6.5. Again, I might kick it up to 7.5 if I was betting like a lot on it. But yeah, I'm going to go with BC on the road. Again, they're bad against a bad Pitt team. I'll take the 6.5 points. What about you?
I like that Miami at Florida State over 53.5. You're talking about a Florida State defense that has given up quite a bit of points. You saw what happened last week against Virginia. They were getting lit up by Virginia there. Miami's coming off a bye week right now, so they've had 2 weeks to prepare. I think Florida State's going to be able to move the football and put up some points here. We saw what Miami's offense was, what they're able to do. I think when you look at that Miami versus Florida game, I don't think Florida State's defense anywhere close to what Florida's defense is. I think that's going to be a rivalry game I think it's at nighttime down at Dope. I can see that game going over, especially when you have a tenacity of Florida State. They can put up 28 points amongst themselves. I think that's going to be a game that's going to be a back and forth game. Tom said he likes 10.5 plus Vandy over Bama. I wouldn't be surprised. I'll actually kind of like that over on that one. I was looking at that one. Let me see where we had that one at. Over 56.5. Vandy and Alabama. Kind of like that over as well.
Where you at on Texas against Florida? Florida's been bad, but they're playing at home. And I liked it at +7 Florida. I just feel like, like Texas, I'm all in on fading Arch. It's already down to 5.5 now.
Right.
So I think that's gonna be
I don't know, man, because that game is such a hard one to read, because when you look at it, both offenses have been anemic. I mean, Texas, at least going into the bye, shows some type of pulse with their offense. With Florida, you don't know what you're going to get. I mean, is Lagway going to turn the ball over 4 times there? Florida has a really good defense, a stout defense. Are they going to create havoc there? That's a tough one. That's probably one of the ones that I probably stay away from. Here's one, Dave, kind of tying back to Ohio State that I was looking at. What's the saying? Anytime a team plays against Ohio State, the following week, they're so beat up physically that it always impacts the second week after you play Ohio State. You got Washington flying all the way across the country to Maryland. Maryland's coming off a bye. They're getting 6.5 points, 6 to 6.5 points at home. Last time Maryland was on the field, they were plus 10.5 at Wisconsin, and they absolutely destroyed Wisconsin at their house. Cover that one easy as an outright dog. That's a game that I'm kind of looking at there, just saying, hey, Ohio State could have put a butt whooping on Washington, physically beat up. They were already injured going into that Ohio State game. They're still beat up, flying all the way across the country. And you got Maryland at home coming off a bye, getting 6.5 points. That might be one to look at.
I like that too, man. I like that too. That freshman quarterback for Maryland is legit. And you're right. I mean, flying across the country, playing Ohio State last week, everything you said, Maryland coming off a bye, Maryland being a lot better than people thought, definitely myself included. Malik Washington is a good young quarterback. Big Ten's got some really good young quarterbacks. Julian Sand being one of them, Dante Moore being one of them. I still like the kid at Washington, even though he got bottled up by this defense. They said all week, we're going to cage the pocket. And man, did they cage that pocket against.
Yeah.
He was going to juke Arvell Reese, and Arvell's like, bam.
Speaking of Arvell, let me ask you this. Dane Brugler, NFL guy, says that he's starting to see and hear buzz that Arvell Reese could be the first Buckeye.
Dan's going to take credit for that. Dan has been saying for a while, everybody's got Caleb going, and he might, but Dan says a couple weeks ago, Dan said he thought Arvell might be the first Buckeye off the board. I'm like,
Dan calling this shot. Hey, what do you think though? If Arvell keeps playing like this, because he's like that prototypical 6'4", 240 linebacker with incredible closing speed, can play off the ball, can rush the quarterback. Like, he's like the total package. And the more he plays, these NFL guys go absolutely berserk over him on social media and stuff. And then you look at Caleb Downs, outstanding player, top 10 pick. But when you look at the NFL and how they value the safety position, could you see a situation to where Arvell does go in front of Caleb? I don't know, Dave.
Bet Caleb, but it's one of those situations where, like, I don't think you can go wrong either way. Even if you're picking in the top 10, Caleb's not getting out of the top 10. He's going to be the first safety since Jamal Adams to be taken in the top 10. Arvell is now, because you're right. I mean, and he's going to put on a show at the combine. The tape looks great. Right. He's the best pass rusher on the team, or at least one of the best. He's the best at spying on the team. He can do everything, like you said. He's straight out of Central Casting as far as his size. So is Sonny. But yeah, I'm starting to think Arvell and Dane, by the way, Dane Brugler is a longtime guest on the Bucknuts Morning 5. So yeah, but Dan Rubin will take credit for that. I would too if I was him, if that ends up panning out.
Todd McShay had an awesome segment this week on his show talking about Ohio State, and the one thing that he said, and I had tweeted out earlier this week, Todd McShay said, I'm putting it in pen right now. I'm calling it. Arvell Reese is the best linebacker in all of college football. And he was just absolutely raving about how his sideline to sideline speed, like how disciplined he is. And it had me juiced up, ready to run through the wall when he was talking about, when you throw in the tape of this Ohio State defense, Matt Patricia has this front seven playing gap sound. They're playing relentless. They're playing hard. All 11 guys are flying to the football, and those guys are just absolutely just creating havoc. Like, it's just so cool to see, like, hey, you're not seeing a lot of false steps, and having Sonny with his size and speed and Arvell and his size and speed at linebacker, it's like a cheat code. Like, it reminds me of back in the days what those old Bama and Georgia linebackers used to look like, Dave. Like, when you get off the bus and you see their linebackers and you see the way that they run, you're like, oh, that's a different type of breed right there at the linebacker position. You know, Washington's little quarterback, he like 5'9". He saw Arvell coming, spying, running like a 4.4 at him at full speed at 240. He's like, hey, man, business decision. I gotta get down.
They look like big, huge defensive ends. The linebackers, Sonny and Arvell, they just look like big defensive ends in their linebackers. And they run like the wind. It's awesome.
Then the crazy thing about it is K-Mac is graded out as his second best interior defensive lineman so far this season in all of college football, according to PFF. Like, when you look at him, we all thought that, hey, K-Mac flashed last year, and we thought that he has the potential to be really good. The one knock about him was, okay, can he handle, down in and down out like 50 snaps a game? I mean, K-Mac looked like a first-team All-American so far, Dave. The way he's disruptive.
For sure. I mean, you got the one tech. I think he's the best one tech in the country, Caden McDonald. You got the way Arvell's playing at linebacker and Sonny. Caleb at safety. IGB's playing great back there. The entire secondary is playing great. The entire defense is playing great. I did see the one starter that did not grade out well was Tywone Malone, but he graded out better than Edric Houston. So those two guys did not grade out well. Everybody else graded out really well on defense. And
I think, and you've seen it, Dave. I think they need to rest Edric, man. I think he's trying. I think he's trying to give it his all. But I was listening to other reports this week, and one of the things they said they noticed, I think it was last Wednesday, Edric was limping pretty bad after practice. Had a pretty big brace on. Said he didn't feel too great. I think he's trying to gut it through, but I think it might be a situation to where it's clear that he's not healthy right now. And it's impacting his game because he's not being able to perform like he wants to. But that doesn't excuse some of the mental things that goes on as far as the penalties that kind of cuts his playing time short. Because every time he has one of those mental laps with the penalties, they pull him right out. And it's either Tywone that goes in there, or Will Smith or somebody like that when they're trying to get that rotation in there.
Yeah, it goes back to last year. He had a couple of them last year when he was a true freshman. I still believe in the kid. The talent is there. First year playing defensive tackle, his first full season. He did play some D tackle last year. They moved him midseason. And like you mentioned, he's dealing with an injury. So
yeah,
I think he's going to be fine. But we got it. It's important for this defense when they play teams like Michigan, they've got to be at full strength. They've got to have Edric Houston ready to go for a game like that. All right. Great stuff as always. BTA Fridays. Thank you, Jonah.
Before we get off here, I'd
Yeah.
be remiss to ask you what you think about that Penn State Oregon game, man, and James Franklin basically going to the podium and saying he sucks at coaching in big games. Like when one of their media members asked James Franklin about the perception that he's not good in big games, and he basically said, "I'm not." He was just like, until proven otherwise, I'm not good in big games.
I mean, it'd be foolish for him to go in there and be like, no, I mean, like, the record's misleading. The record is what the record is. It's like, what is he, like 4-21 against top 10 teams or something like that? 4-22? So ridiculous. And in top 5, he only has that one fluke win over Ohio State with the blocked field goal, and then Trace McSorley just throwing up Hail Marys left and right. That's his one win over a top 5 team. Yeah, it's crazy. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. It's similar to John Cooper, but like worse than John Cooper. Because, I mean, people say, oh, Cooper he was great, but he just couldn't beat Michigan. It's like, no, Cooper overall was bad in big games. His bowl record was 3-8. So Cooper was bad in bowl games, bad against Michigan, but he at least beat Notre Dame, won a Rose Bowl, was good against Penn State overall. And Penn State was good back then, although he got smoked in 94, 63-14. But, oh, yeah, it reminds me of Cooper, but worse.
Yeah. The crazy thing about it too is two things on Penn State. You never want to hear about kids getting injured, but they just lost their best linebacker this week, Rojas, on Tuesday to an injury, who's going to be out for the season. And going into the season, that was one of their biggest weak links on the defense, was the linebacker position, because I've been following through camp. Jim Knowles had only trusted maybe like 3 linebackers on their team in his defense, and now you lose Rojas. That's going to be a big blow to their defense. He was probably one of those guys that they could not have afforded to lose. The other thing that I thought was hilarious, James Franklin this week said that he's going to have Jim Knowles speak to the team about how Ohio State lost 2 games last year, but went on a run to win the national championship. And James said that Jim Knowles had talked to the staff about that, and it's a message that James wanted the entire team to hear. So sometime this week, literally Jim Knowles went in front of the entire Penn State team to talk about Ohio State, a team who they're going to be playing in a few weeks, lost 2 games, and how they came together when times were tough. They didn't let this one game define them, and they went on to win the national championship, and you can do it too. So that was like Jim Knowles really went in front of the team to talk about how they can be like Ohio State too.
That's fine. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall to hear that one. That must have been a fiery speech there. I know Knowles could get fired up occasionally, but yeah, he was a lot more stoic than he was fired up. All right. I'm always fired up to do the shows with you on Friday. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
All right. I'll talk to you next week, my friend.
All right. Thanks, man.
Later.
Appreciate it. He is Mr. Jonah Booker. He said next week. I'm gonna bug him and see if he's available for the post-game show. I wasn't gonna put him on the spot here. And if he's not available, he's not available. If he can pop on for 5 or 10 minutes, that'll make the post-game show even better. That's right. What we learned live coming at you immediately following tomorrow night's game. So we'll be finishing that show, I'm sure, early Sunday morning. That's all right. It's all right. So join me right after the game. I will have guests. We'll have Steve Hellwagon and Patrick Murphy from Ohio Stadium, and I'll have some guys before then. Heater is always a regular guest unless he has something going on. So, but thanks again to Jay Book. I love doing the Friday shows with him. I know you guys love it as well. We have a very large audience for the show. I appreciate that very much. Thanks to everybody who tuned into the show. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. That stuff really helps us out. And thanks to all of you. If you're listening on, Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to the podcast, if you can give us a 5-star review or anything like that, it really helps. So appreciate you guys. Thanks again to Jay Book. Again, I'll be with you right after the game tomorrow for What We Learned Live. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day and a great weekend. Go Bucks.